Hey, I'm Frank, and I have hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Before starting Cosentix, I was so uncomfortable with my symptoms, like not being able to sleep on white sheets or wear white clothes. Now I can appreciate the little things.
Cosentix secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if allergic to Cosentix. Get checked for TB before starting. Increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like TB or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTIX or Cosentix.com.
You're stronger than HS. Ask your dermatologist about Cosentix.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, according to a piece in today's UK Daily Mail, blowhard Steve Bannon is preparing a presidential run in 2028. Put aside for a moment the question as to whether Steve Bannon would be a viable candidate for president. People ask me, well, you and Steve Bannon are both supporters of President Donald Trump. What's your beef with Steve Bannon? Let me be very clear. As reported in the New York Post, on January 16th of 2018, Steve Bannon testified under oath to the House Intelligence Committee, and he was asked by Congressman Adam Schiff whether he had ever discussed Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, or the allegedly hijacked emails from WikiLeaks. And Bannon said, and I quote, "No, never." Schiff said, "On no occasion." And Bannon said, "No, on no occasion." You can imagine my surprise then when Steve Bannon showed up as a surprise witness for special counsel Robert Mueller at my trial, sweeping to the witness stand dressed all in black, kind of like a fat Johnny Cash. Bannon was asked the exact same question. Asked by the prosecutor, "Did you ever discuss Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, or these allegedly stolen emails?" Bannon said, "Yes. Stone raised them in every phone conversation we had in 2016. He went on to say that he considered me to be the Trump campaign's access point with WikiLeaks. Now, since I had taken a polygraph test, actually two, by the same lie detector company used by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the FBI, on that exact narrow question, it is abundantly clear that Steve Bannon perjured himself at my trial to try to help Robert Mueller put me away for a term of 7 to 9 years, when I had in fact done nothing wrong, and no misstatement I made to the House Intelligence Committee covered up any underlying crime. In other words, there was no materiality. The judge said to me at sentencing that you have been convicted of covering up for Donald Trump, to which I say to you today, covering up what? The Russian collusion? As WikiLeaks, as Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has demonstrated, there's no evidence whatsoever of Russian collusion. Steve Bannon is now talking about running for president to keep legitimate candidates like J.D. Vance or Secretary of State Marco Rubio or the director of national intelligence Tulsi Gabbard out of that position, I think, so his grift can continue. Speaking in today's UK Daily Mail about Vice President J.D. Vance, Bannon reportedly said, "I love him, but Vance is not tough enough to run in 2028. Bannon is actually claiming without any evidence that he somehow created J.D. Vance, although there's no record of Vance and Bannon having any kind of major relationship within politics. You know, Steve Bannon may talk a good game, but deep down, he's a snake. Bannon was initially fired from the first Trump administration for leaking constantly to the fake news media, desperate to paint himself as the individual who was most responsible for President Trump's successes. Who can forget when Bannon appeared on the cover of Time magazine with the headline that said, Trump's brain? I've known Donald Trump for 50 years. Let me be clear. The man most responsible for Donald Trump's election as president is, well, Donald Trump. He isn't managed, he isn't handled, he isn't packaged, he isn't scripted. And Steve Bannon merely followed a written campaign plan left behind by Paul Manafort when he was driven from the campaign through the efforts of Hillary Clinton, who leaked a fake story that Manafort had engaged in illegal activities in Ukraine. His most despicable comments about Trump came during a series of on the record interviews with the author Michael Wolff in his book, Fire and Fury. To Wolff, Bannon said, and I quote, the Trump organization is a criminal entity, and predicted that a financial investigation would reveal that Trump was, quote, not the billionaire he said he was, but just another scumbag. Quoting Steve Bannon. Bannon said that the January 2016 meeting between Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, campaign manager Paul Manafort, and a Russian lawyer was treasonous and unpatriotic, and went on to predict that the special counsel, Rob, make Donald Trump Jr. crack like an egg on live television. Bannon said that Trump's daughter Ivanka was dumb as a brick, and said that Donald Trump had lost it, referring to his cognitive ability. The validity of these comments are not in doubt and caused President Trump to trash Bannon publicly, saying that Bannon had lost his mind. He then subsequently fired Bannon. Bannon could be sore because I wrote a piece for the Daily Caller the day before he was canned, calling for his termination. Strapped for cash after getting exiled from the MAGA movement, Bannon started hanging out with the sex predator Jeffrey Epstein, and was recently seen in a picture framed in Epstein's home, hanging out with the alleged Hollywood pedophile Woody Allen. Bannon was actually giving public relations advice for a number of years under the guise of filming a documentary that has suspiciously never been released. Bannon has 15 hours of videotape of him interviewing Jeffrey Epstein. Why would anyone hang out with somebody who had already at that point been convicted of a sex crime? According to Bannon aide Sam Nunberg, Jeffrey Epstein had agreed to pay for Steve Bannon's various political projects. The bottom line is Bannon is bad news for the MAGA right and should be laughed off the stage if he actually does try to run for president in 2028. This entire idea is ludicrous, but adding insult to injury is the fact that Bannon has been on my international worst dress list for 6 years in a row. The man dresses like he chases down hobos for his wardrobe, or perhaps it's dumpster diving, I'm not sure. And his aversion to soap and water and the basics of hygiene are particularly offensive to me, as they should be to all Americans. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. When we come back, we're going to talk about Apple now pledging $600 billion in new investments in the United States. Frankly, I'd be happy if they could just get their talk to text function to work a little better. I'm Roger Stone, and I'll be right.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Greg Kelly here for Colonial Metals Group, China's leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner.
You may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
Hi, welcome to IKEA.
This is my college campus.
Correct, but I see you're on IKEA.com ordering some college items.
My daughter's room is pretty bare. We need a lamp, some comfy pillows, her favorite stuffy.
Dad!
With pickup options, we've got what you need to conveniently order IKEA. Literally anywhere.
Sweet. More time for gaming.
And studying. Wait, where are you going now?
Have to show the ultimate Frisbee team how easy it is to order from IKEA. Get IKEA whenever, wherever, however you want. Choose from thousands of pickup locations, affordable delivery options, and more.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. You know, as a veteran of 13 national Republican presidential campaigns, I have to comment on how ludicrous it is to talk about the 2028 election when Donald Trump hasn't even been president for a year yet, and when we haven't even held the 2026 off-year elections. The other night, I was on Laura Loomer's show. Laura Loomer, I think it's Loomer Unleashed on Rumble, and she made the observation that Republicans will not hold the House in the next elections. Let me be clear. In American politics, a week can be a lifetime. No one can say, certainly no experienced political hand, can say what the political environment will be in 2026, never mind 2028. So I politely told my good friend Laura Loomer that grand pronouncements about the outcome of the 2026 elections would be completely inappropriate and unpredictable at this time. As far as the Republican contest is concerned, in our party, a sitting vice president, particularly one who's doing as good a job as J.D. Vance, would have an enormous leg up. We believe in hegemony in our party, the natural order of things. This is why we nominated my old boss, Senator Bob Dole, who I served as a special assistant for 2 years in the U.S. Senate in 1996 rather than in 1988, which is probably his best shot. It's also why we nominated John McCain in 2012 instead of nominating him in 2000 when he was a much stronger candidate. It is premature to talk about any of this. Right now, we need to focus on helping President Donald Trump get his agenda implemented. His economic program is working extraordinarily well. Pointed out yesterday on the show that in the month of June, it was the first time in 15 years U.S. government actually had a surplus. That's right, we were in the black. That is only due to the massive revenue increase spiked because of these tariff deals that the president has been successfully pulling off. Put that together with closing our southern border, where illegal crossings are down by 98%. And of course, the biggest tax cut in American history, which will be continued this coming January. And you have all the recipe combined with cutting regulations for the greatest economy we've ever had. That is the strongest and most important thing to do going into the 2026 elections. Now, if President Trump could just persuade the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, to look at the inflation numbers, to look at the unemployment numbers, to recognize that both of those indicators are either at the same level or actually lower than they were the last 4 times the Federal Reserve cut interest rates on the American people, this economy would really boom. Meanwhile, Apple, the tech giant, has announced that they're investing $600 billion over the next 4 years. their new American manufacturing program here in the United States. Apple CEO Tim Cook made the announcement during a meeting with President Donald Trump in the White House just yesterday. This adds to an additional $200 billion that Apple had already pledged to create jobs in the United States. Now, Apple says they intend to expand their domestic supply chain while encouraging its international partners to begin manufacturing key components of their products here within the United States. Apple intends to fortify partnerships with American-based companies like Texas Instruments, Global Wafers, Corning, and Broadcom through this new agreement. They announced that apps for iPhones and Apple Watches will now, for the first time, be made in America, and domestic production of rare earth magnet and silicone chips will increase in the United States as well. Now, big tech companies have previously led the charge to sell the United States out to China and other foreigners before Donald Trump became president. But Trump is changing this corporate culture very, very quickly with his America First policies. Because of the power of the tariff, these entities are being brought to heel. And in my opinion, this will help the American worker. As far as Apple is concerned, I would just be happy if they could get their talk to text function to work better. Am I the only one who's noticed that in the last several days it has become increasingly inaccurate and unwieldy? I don't know if this is due to some kind of an update, but frankly, talk to text isn't working very well. So if the executives at Apple are listening, please fix that before you put $600 billion into the U.S. economy. Meanwhile, President Trump is expected to meet with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, which could be as soon as next week. This news broke yesterday. The president is expected to meet with Putin to talk about brokering a deal that could end Ukraine-Russia war. This follows a visit to Russia by Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, one of the most rational voices for diplomacy and temperance within the Trump administration. The Witkoff visit apparently went very well because it seems that peace is back on the table. Additionally, Russian official Yuri Ushakov told reporters that there was an offer from the American side which the Russian side deems acceptable with regards to ending the war in Ukraine. It appears that the momentum is returning to the side of ending this conflict. The war between Russia and Ukraine has been an atrocity since the outset, with senseless death and destruction subsidized by continuous backing by Western powers. I point out yet again that we agreed in both the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk Accords not to push Ukraine into NATO, which is to say, not to put U.S. missiles, NATO missiles, on the ground in Ukraine pointed at Russia. Under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden, we have violated those agreements. It is why the Russians invaded Ukraine. The idea that Vladimir Putin is power mad and that he aspires to take over all of Ukraine, all of Poland, all of Germany, all of France is a ridiculous globalist idea that is being promulgated by those who've completely lost touch with reality and the actual political record. Donald Trump was elected as the peace candidate. He is anti-war, and I think he is on the cusp of his greatest single breakthrough. The man who ended the conflict between Pakistan and India, the man who brought peace between Rwanda and the Congo, the man who has ceased the development of nuclear weapons in Iran is on the cusp of ending a conflict in Russia and Ukraine that could have led us to World War III. All Americans are praying for the success of our president in his efforts to end this senseless war. When he was asked in the debate, did he want the Russians to win? He had the most rational answer. He said, I want the killing to stop. I'm Roger Stone. You're in the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out That's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Well, reports that will upset some Democrat propagandists indicate that Jeffrey Epstein's longtime accomplice, essentially his pimp, Ghislaine Maxwell, stated in sworn testimony to federal prosecutors that President Donald Trump did nothing of note to cause concern with regards to Epstein's child sex trafficking operation. Maxwell was recently questioned by the Department of Justice, an interview that was recorded and will likely be released to the public in some form, hopefully very soon. What I find perplexing is the fact that this is the first time Maxwell, who was already convicted for her role in Epstein's child sex trafficking operation, has ever been questioned by federal prosecutors. Really makes you wonder about former Southern District of New York prosecutor Damian Williams, who prosecuted Maxwell. What is it that Williams did not want the people to know? How is it possible that this is the first time that Maxwell has ever been questioned? Sources have stated that Maxwell said nothing in the interview that would indicate that President Trump was part of Epstein's child sex trafficking operation. After giving her testimony, Maxwell was transferred to a lower security prison in Florida. She currently has an appeal before the Supreme Court, and if she continues to cooperate, Maxwell may be key to understanding exactly who was involved in the Epstein pedophile network. Now, I wrote about this very extensively way back in 2015 when I wrote my book, The Clintons' War on Women. That best-selling book, the longest chapter in it is chapter 7, entitled Orgy Island. I took the title from my good friend Sean Hannity. And at that time, I had, which I got from the journal Brian, Epstein's telephone book. Not everyone in his private phone book was involved in any improper activity. It is important to note that his butler, Alberto Rodriguez, who sold the book to a journalist, circled the names of those who he believed were involved in improper sexual activity with children, circling other names that he indicated were witnesses to these illegal activities. I also had the FAA manifests that tell you exactly who flew on Epstein's plane, dubbed the Lolita Express, when they flew, and who else was on the plane. I can tell you, based on an exhaustive review of the information, that there's no evidence whatsoever that Donald Trump engaged in any improper activity. Donald Trump, unlike Bill Clinton, who was on Epstein's island at least 3 times and who was on his plane at least 26 times, Donald Trump never visited Epstein's home in New York City, never visited his island, never visited his ranch in New Mexico. And the one and only time that Trump was at Epstein's Palm Beach home is well accounted for in the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who was one of the victims of Epstein, who refused to take $1 million settlement and continued her litigation against the convicted pedophile. Now, I interviewed Virginia Roberts Giuffre for 6 hours, 2 3-hour sessions, and I read all of her sworn testimony. She was present on the one and only occasion that Donald Trump was in Epstein's home. It was for a public event, for a fundraiser for a charity, and she testified under oath in her sworn documents that she witnessed no inappropriate activity by Donald Trump, that he was a perfect gentleman. She and her attorney, Brad Edwards, both have said publicly that Donald Trump was the only major public figure who was cooperative with them in their efforts to bring Epstein to justice. So this entire canard that is whipped up by the Democrats that Donald Trump has something to hide is a fraud. It is exactly that. It is propaganda. Trump, the other day, the whole thing was a hoax. Took me a while to figure out exactly what he meant. I don't think he was claiming, since it was the Trump administration that charged Epstein in 2019 with one count of child sex trafficking and a second count of conspiring to engage in child sex trafficking. I don't think Trump was saying that Epstein wasn't a pedophile or that he wasn't a child sex trafficker. What he was saying is that all of these sensitive records have been in the hands of the Southern District of New York federal prosecutors, the most partisan hitting leftist prosecutors in the country, as well as in the New York office of the FBI. These are hotbeds, both active in the Russian collusion hoax, and therefore Trump correctly speculated documents may have been salted with fake evidence that would seem to implicate Donald Trump. Then, just days later, the Wall Street Journal, of all publications, published an alleged birthday card that Donald Trump supposedly gave to Epstein, in which it is alleged that Trump wrote that he and Epstein, quote unquote, shared a secret. This is what we call a fugazi. First of all, who types a birthday card and then just signs their name? The answer is no one. As I say, Maxwell's cooperation may be the key to understanding exactly who was involved in Epstein's past, even though Epstein may be pedophiles of whom he provided children are still out there operating in high positions of authority throughout the government, business, and academia, and unfortunately, they continue to prey on children. They must be brought to justice, and the feds must make sure that Maxwell gives us the goods on who exactly the evil predators were before anyone grants her any kind of a deal. Still shocking to me that this is the first time she has been questioned by federal authorities. It's almost as if, well, they didn't want to know. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has announced his administration will crack down on mRNA vaccinations. The Trump administration announced that the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, also known as BARDA, will be halting its development of mRNA vaccinations after a comprehensive review of their efficacy in the COVID-19 pandemic. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, who has led the charge in terms of making America healthy again, said the data show these vaccines failed to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and the flu. We're shifting that funding towards safer, broader vaccination platforms that remain effective even as viruses mutate. This will include a loss of contracts and awards from pharma giants such as Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. No new mRNA-based vaccine projects will be allowed from this point forward. Global Health Investment Corporation, an HHS partner in charge of the BARDA Ventures, will also defund equity investments related to mRNA vaccinations. This means that they will lose an additional $500 million in funding from that move alone. This is a bad day for Big Pharma, which means it is a great day for the American. Still find it outrageous that Dr. Anthony Fauci and his wife, who had key federal positions in which they advocated these vaccinations and which they tried to make them mandatory, were also able to make tens of millions of dollars because they were shareholders in the companies that actually manufactured the vaccinations. It is shocking to me that that is not illegal. It is at a minimum immoral. But more precisely, it is abundant that Dr. Anthony Fauci, when he was the head of NIH, lied before the U.S. Congress when he specifically said that U.S. taxpayers had not funded the weaponization of the COVID-19 vaccination through its gain of function in a Wuhan Chinese lab. He said that under intense questioning by Senator Rand Paul. Now, Rand Paul has sent a referral to the U.S. Justice Department so that she can be charged at a minimum with lying to Congress on this material issue. I honestly hope that there is a prosecution because I think that, well, there are crimes against humanity here. Uh, Anyone who gets beyond the mainstream media understands that the COVID-19 vaccination proved not to be safe or effective, and that contrary to what our public leaders told us, being vaccinated did not protect one from contracting the virus. Meanwhile, Superman has joined ICE. The actor Dean Cain, the outspoken conservative who played Superman on the popular 1990s TV show Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, told Fox News that he has joined ICE and is ready to serve his country. Kane has additionally recorded a recruitment video encouraging others to join ICE that will make the which will be fully released in the days to come. Kane said, "These brave men and women need someone to stand up for them. So rarely, these days we are seeing that someone like Daniel Penny, the patriot who put his life on the line, standing up to protect a woman on a New York subway car, only to be vilified and charged by the New York City system. Dan Bongino steps up, giving up a $5 million a year radio and podcast career, and takes his position in the FBI to serve the American people. This is the kind of thing where people have to step up. Dean Cain said, I'm stepping up. Hopefully, a whole bunch of other former officers, former ICE agents will also step up and recruitment goals immediately to help run the greatest single deportation effort of dangerous, illegal immigrant gang members and criminals in U.S. history. Now, Barack Obama actually deported 2.6 million illegals, but Democrats pretend that that never happened. They vilify Donald Trump for putting America first and his successful effort to deport dangerous illegal criminals. I say God bless Dean Cain for stepping up and volunteering to help ICE recruit more agents, and God bless President Donald Trump and my friend Tom Homan, who, as the acting director of the operation to deport these criminals, is making America stronger and safer again. God bless both of them. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Get ready for back to school with H&M. Enjoy up to 50% off mix and match basics, new denim styles, and more. Find their favorites for in and out of the classroom at your nearest H&M or on hm.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You're back in the Stone Zone here on Apple Audio Networks. The Democrats are going out of their minds because of a congressional redistricting plan in Texas, which is actually based on the population of Texans, U.S. citizens. Democrat legislators have illegally fled that state. They are hole up in Illinois, where Governor J.B. Pritzker owns a hotel resort, where the Democrats are avoiding having a quorum in the Texas State House. Unfortunately, this is quite illegal, and Governor Abbott plus the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, are well within their rights to remove those recalcitrant Democrats from their elected positions. I think that is about to happen. All of this ignores the fact that Democrats have used the census figures that include illegal non-U.S. citizens as the basis for congressional districting in New York, California, Illinois, and other states. In other words, Democrats have engaged widely in gerrymandering to get favorable districts. And now, when the Texas Republicans, who control both houses plus the governorship, move to have a congressional redistricting plan based on the actual population of U.S. citizens, they act illegally to try to thwart it. So So President Donald Trump is ordering a brand new census that actually will exclude illegal immigrants and provides for more accurate numbers that will then be the basis of congressional districts throughout America. Trump stated in a Truth Social post that the new and highly accurate census will be, quote, based on modern day facts and figures, and more importantly, using the results and information gained from the presidential election in 24, adding that people who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. This comes as President Trump has urged the Texas legislature to pass this new redistricting map that would give Republicans 5 more seats in the Lone Star State. Democrats, as I said, fled the state in order to prevent legislative hearings from taking place, and Texas Republicans are making moves to have these lawmakers arrested for their dereliction of duty as a result. President Trump's aggressive moves on the census and redistricting show that he's playing for keeps in the 2026 midterm elections. No other Republican has ever moved so boldly. This is exactly why we put Donald Trump in office, in my opinion. It's nice to have a fighter as the head of our party and the head of our country for a change. Meanwhile, in the state of Florida, the governor and the legislature are looking at a new redistricting map that could add as many as 2 additional seats to the Florida congressional delegation. I expect that Democrats will start screaming about that. Vote that head count as well, since the Florida redistricting plan will not take into consideration illegal immigrants who are not citizens and therefore should not be counted for the purposes of congressional redistricting. Meanwhile, 56% of the carjackings in Washington, D.C. are committed by minors between 12 and 17 years old. That's right. President Donald Trump recently called for young people to be tried as adults as part of a law and order crackdown to stop the epidemic of carjackings and violent crime in Washington, D.C. This, of course, means that bleeding heart liberals are beginning to whine about how mean and authoritarian Donald Trump is. But crime data from Washington, D.C. shows that Trump knows what he's talking about. Police data from Washington, D.C. shows that 56% of carjackings, as I say, are committed by minors between the ages of 12 and 17. In the past 2 years, there were 1,046 carjackings across Washington, D.C., with 72% of them being involving the use of a firearm. The Washington, D.C. crime epidemic has been a national issue after former Doge Lieutenant Edward Big Balls Coristini was brutally beaten by a gang of thugs after he tried to stop a carjacking involving a young woman just several nights ago. 2 people allegedly involved in this beating, a girl and a boy, both 15 years old, have been arrested thus far. Liberal criminal justice policies have empowered this thuggery. Since the days of Trayvon Martin, they have painted any young person involved in a violent beating as some kind of innocent angel, while that is very rarely, in fact, the case. My opinion, it's time to return law and order. These youths need to be removed from the streets, and a strong message must be sent. If liberals believe it is inhumane, well, I think that is too bad. The rule of law must reign over the rule of feelings. President Donald Trump has spoken openly about the strong possibility that he will take control in the District of Columbia, which by law he is willing and legally able to do. Out of control in our nation's capital, it is obvious to me that the DC government cannot manage the crime problem, and it may call for draconian measures by President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Trump demands that China jeopardized intelligence, and therefore he's called on the CEO of a company called Intel. This Chinese gentleman's name is Lip Bhutan, to resign after his deep connections to the Chinese Communist Party were actually revealed. Trump said the CEO of this company, Intel, is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There is no other solution to this problem. Thank you for your attention to this matter, which Trump often puts at the end of his most important proclamations on social media. It is amazingly refreshing to have a president who actually America first. And Donald Trump recognizes that the number one danger to our country is the Chinese Communist Party. He will pass a law to stop them from buying prime farmland, ranch land, toll plazas, harbors, airports, and toll roads right here in the United States. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear the Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?